Hi, my name is Volma Volcy with the Ring of Democracy. Today I am here with Eric Guerra, Councilman Eric Guerra from Sacramento District 6. Thank you for being with us, Council Member. Again, the Ring of Democracy is a nonprofit organization founded in 2016. Our main goal is to engage, educate, organize, and mobilize brown and black people to just, be able to advocate for themselves. But the work we do is centralized around marginalized communities, and some of the way we do this work in educating them is by bringing folks like you who's running for office to come and talk to us so that they're better educated in regards to how they vote. Without further ado, sir, we'll pass it over to you, and you can start just telling us why you're running for office and why you should be the person, people vote for.
Well, thank you, Volma. Hey, I appreciate you doing this and getting voters informed. Really, when I grew up here, I grew up actually on the other side of the Sacramento River, as a migrant farm worker. And really, it was isolating, the fact that you didn't have access to that type of information about how your government affects you, and particularly the county. And as a migrant farm worker, it was the unincorporated county that affected you the most. And those days, I'll tell you, they were tough. I really have a lot of respect for my folks, my mom in particularly. We would work 12-hour days in the sun. And, as a kid, when we didn't have any childcare, we were out there in the fields with our parents, many families, out, for poverty wages with poor working conditions. And this is why, I've been such a strong advocate for labor and working families, because I know what it's like to be in a position where you are getting poor wages, where it's dangerous for folks, and really where we're not supporting working families to move forward. When I came to Sacramento, and I'm really grateful for Sacramento because, it gave me an opportunity to start a career, to meet my wife, to, now I have two crazy little kids, and but most importantly, now I can own a home. And that didn't seem like a possibility growing up. Every family should have the opportunity to have that way to achieve it. But the county plays such an important role in making sure that people can put their heart, their sweat equity, their dreams into actually achieving something. So our government needs to be working for us to do that. I've been honored to do that as a council member, and as a county supervisor, I'll continue to fight for folks that are out there working every day, just trying to live that American dream, to really provide for their family, and to see something for their kids so that they have a future. So I'm excited about this run for county supervisor, and just to build on the 11 years I've done on the council, working with labor, working with folks who need housing, and working for folks who want to even start a small business. That's how we build a stronger Sacramento. But thanks, Volma, for the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Eric. So we'll just go right into the questions. So affordability is a growing crisis. Well, not a growing crisis.
It's the crisis today. It is the crisis today.
It's the crisis today, like in Sacramento, in our country overall, but things are really, really dire here in Sacramento. So would you mind telling us what some of the specific actions you would take on the county level to reduce cost of living for working families?
Cost of living and working families, believe me, I know it. I know what hunger is like and what it's like when you don't have work or when you're underemployed and you have to have two jobs. To pay for school, I was a night janitor. And so I appreciate folks who have to work those two shifts. Like I mentioned, my mother worked 12 hours in the day, then she had to go to the Heinz cannery at night. That, unfortunately, is a scenario today. So we have to do two things. One, we have to look at wages and how we support higher wage jobs and career opportunities for folks here to go on and off ramp. The second, on the housing issue, is we have to build more housing and more housing at different income levels. Yes, we need extremely low income and low income affordable housing for our seniors, for people who are on fixed incomes, for families who are starting out. But we also need housing for our school teachers and all our clerical workers, folks who are making our economy work today. They're having a tough time. The middle class is being squeezed every day, even to buy a home, because we don't have enough supply. And we're building these homes that are not entry level, these 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 3-car garages, and assume that that's where families are going to start. So we have to mix all of those incomes. Now the county can support the city, and it should, and other cities, in building in our commercial corridors. If you take a drive down Stockton Boulevard right now, you're going to see the successes that I've been able to pull together of extremely low income housing, affordable housing, workforce housing, and even market rate housing for our young professionals. You'll see projects out there that are improving that corridor where they have access to transit. Because if you look at communities, their biggest expenses is the housing cost, the transportation cost, and the child care cost. It's almost $3,200 to have 2 kids in child care. So that we have to address those 3 principal issues. If we build housing and we do it in a smart way on our commercial corridors where we have vacant lots, where there's illegal dumping, and we focus on building in those areas, we improve the transit line. Now, on Stockton Boulevard, you can get a bus every 10 to 15 minutes. And that values people's time. Why are we devaluing people's time when they have to wait an hour to catch a bus? That's not okay. So then they're forced to buy a car where they have a car payment, where they have insurance, where they have maintenance. The gas is going up because of a nut in the White House that's making all of our economy fall apart. But locally, we can address those issues if we focus on how we develop. So affordability is that. And then finally, I'll say on the wages, like we have had such a strong history of being a manufacturing city, where those are jobs that that don't require a 4-year degree, that we can work with our union halls to be able to get apprenticeships. We need to focus on making sure that we're providing more than just retail jobs, more than just working at the Golden One Center. We need to have opportunities for folks here to start a career pathway. And I've done that as with Building Aggie Square and as the chair of our Employment Training Agency, making sure that we're building and finding ways to get people hired locally in on-ramps and off-ramps in their career. I'm excited to do that at the county level because our housing market is regional, our workforce market is regional, and even our child care costs are regional costs. I know I can take that on as a county supervisor to address affordability.
Oh, thank you so much, Eric. And I'll go off the questions that have been prepared for me here. Obviously you talked earlier how you and your parents were like farm workers, right? So like a family of immigrants, basically.
Family of immigrants.
We live now in a country where immigrants are a little bit frowned upon, right? I'm an immigrant.
I'm an immigrant.
But I'm from Haiti. You're an immigrant. So at the county level, I know you've done things to protect people at the city level, right? At the county level, what are the resources that are available and that you will make sure that you utilize to protect immigrant workers from being displaced or from being kidnapped or all the stuff that we're seeing that's happening in front of us with ICE being at the head of it all?
Yeah, like you said, look, I grew up as an immigrant, as an undocumented immigrant. My dad had a green card because my grandfather was a bracero. My sister was a U.S. citizen, and my mother and I were undocumented. So it's a mixed status family. That's the scenario that we live in today. So this false idea that there's a black and white scenario of immigrants is not the truth. And we unfortunately faced deportations during this same political heightness in the 80s. And what a tragedy, because so many of us just came here to work. That's what we know how to do. If you talk to anyone, any Mexicanos, they'll tell you, yeah, we're here to work. And any immigrant, that's like the story. They come here to survive. But what the county can do is build what I've done on the city. When the first Trump administration came in, I didn't need to have a law degree to know that we needed legal defense immediately. So this county should grow and support the Fuel Network, which provides legal defense and education, and to support organizations like NorCal Resist and Opening Doors that are helping refugees and asylees. Because it's not just about immigrants, it's the cross-section of immigrants, refugees, and asylees that are under attack right now. The federal government is taking away resources from refugees. These are people who helped our soldiers and our American citizens abroad during a time of conflict, and now they come here and we're reneging on our commitment. We need to support all those refugees that are here through making sure that they have access to the services, workforce, and the ability to transition. Our asylees as well, they have the legal authorization to be here. but they're in a weird gap where they can't work at that time frame while they're adjudicating their case. We need to meet with them specifically and have that support network in place so that the housing, the food, those things as they're going through their process are managed. But there are many organizations that are doing that work on the front lines. The county needs to start by working with those organizations on the front lines, like NorCal Resist, like Opening Doors. And I built that network out strong so that we can make sure that we support folks. Right now, our resources are limited to the city, but we need to do it in the county. But here's an even bigger approach. It shouldn't be just the county of Sacramento. Frankly, Sacramento needs to be working with Yolo County because a lot of our immigrants that live here are working in Yolo County. They could be picked up over there. In same way, a lot of folks are buying in communities of West Sacramento, but working in the city of Sacramento. So if you can imagine that we can get Yolo County and Sacramento to create a joint program where they're addressing that issue. And I've already talked to the supervisors there. See, I'm not waiting for this election to start helping folks. I'm already raising private dollars for legal defense services to make sure we're doing that. And then finally, even as chair of Head Start, I've already started the conversations about how we ensure that we have appropriate lockdown procedures at our child care centers and that we educate the private child care centers throughout the county so that our children are not used as pawns by the federal government to go after their families. We need to do all of this in concert and unity. And I've been able to build bridges and bring people together to support that effort. On the county, I'll continue to do that as well. And most importantly, let's not forget that our immigrants, if you think about the success that I've had on Stockton Boulevard, it's working with the refugees that came here during the fall of Saigon. They came in here. When we support them and they are able to start their own businesses, now you have an area that's flourishing where they're reinvesting into that area. And it makes it rich. It makes it so welcoming. It makes what is Sacramento so strong. It's that diversity of so many people here who make it a better place.
Thank you, Eric. So just a couple of weeks ago, or a few weeks ago really, the tragedy happened in Natomas where a high school kid was shot. And so I wanted to, and that's the district you're running
Yes,
in. So I wanted to just talk about public safety at the county level as well, which include jails, probation, and community-based programs. How do you approach public safety in a way that balances accountability, prevention, and rehabilitation?
Yeah, well, first, let me tell you, my family and I have been very intimately involved in public safety and in the correctional system. My father was in and out of state prison. He spent a lot of time in Susanville and county jail. He was a double striker, rest in peace. But, every time he was released, he was set to fail. And that is the problem that we have today, is we have so many people who commit a crime and they must do their time. Let's make that very clear. When someone commits a crime, they should do their time. But when they're being released, and unless they're a person who's been sentenced for life, they're going to come back out to society. And what we want is people to be prepared for that. But the challenge we have is that they're not. We need to make sure that workforce opportunities, such as what the building trades are doing, teaching people a path where they have hope to change their life. If they go back to the same place and the same scenario, they're not going to change their life. So we need to make sure that people aren't set to fail like my father was when he came out. The second piece here is that we have to have better engagement and recruitment within our law enforcement from our own communities so that our law enforcement knows the communities that they're serving, that we're not transplanting people here from the Bay Area to work in law enforcement here, that we look at a pipeline, and we've done that on the city level, and I hope we do that at the county level, where we recruit from our communities to go through the law academies, to go to Sac State and go through their law academies. And then when they are hired through our police or sheriff departments or law enforcement or probation officers, they know the communities, they have the relationships. That's how we make better connection with our law enforcement and community. I'm proud to be endorsed by, Tina Roberts and Daryl Roberts, also Merv Brookins, and even Rick Jennings, who is on the council with me, but has done a lot of work through his nonprofit on engaging with young people. I know what it's like being, a brown man in the 90s, a young teen who, without hope at one point, We need to get hope into kids and engagement early on, intervention early on about, what the dangers are of even picking up a firearm, picking up a gun, and what that means to somebody, and the dangers that it puts you in and others around us. We need to do more of that intervention, but most importantly, instilling hope in children and in young people that there is a future for them, because that will drive them to do different things that are more positive than following where they were. A lot of it is about, can we get somebody a good job, a job where they can control their own future?
Awesome. Yeah, I completely agree with that, especially around prevention. Yes. So the county oversees major health and human services systems. What changes would you make to improve access to health care, particularly for low-income residents and those in crisis? When I say by those in crisis, I mean those living on the streets and who are homeless.
Yeah. Bottom line, right now, the biggest crisis we see in our community is the mental health and drug addiction crisis. I mean, you can go any part of the city, but just even downtown, well, folks are walking in the middle of the street, talking to themselves, not in the elements, and so many folks who are suffering from some major addiction. We need to make sure that the county is focusing not only on that, but partnering with the city and the cities. Because when someone is picked up in Folsom or Rancho by their police department for a mental health crisis or a drug addiction issue, they get processed in one area in the county, and that's downtown Sacramento. And then that person is released immediately, out into the community without any support. We need to have a different approach. It's very simple. You need a place to call, a person to respond, and a place to go. We need to strengthen 988, which is our mental health suicide hotline that can get the emergency support and health for that person suffering through that issue. Right now, 911 and 988 are not even coordinated. Most people don't even know there's a 988.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that. And so we need to get that out. And so if you do call 911, we need to have a immediate warm handoff to 988. You need a person to respond. We need to have our HEART team, which are our clinicians that are willing to respond immediately. And even if it is law enforcement or the fire department that responds, we need to have the county have a person to respond with them so that they get directed to a place to go. The Crisis Receiving Center. In downtown, we do have a Crisis Receiving Center that I was proud to vote for, and to make sure that we have a place for mental health and drug addiction that is not the ER room or is not the jail. Last night I had a conversation with the surgeon that lives here in the community and was telling me that 45 beds out of the 110 emergency room beds in South Sacramento Kaiser were filled up by people who are experiencing mental health or substance abuse issues from the street. 45. So if you and I have an accident and we need an ER space, it's already filled. There's no room at the end. We have to make sure that we get them directed to a crisis receiving center. But guess what I've already been able to start here? By partnering with organizations like WellSpace, we're already building right now on Stockton Boulevard 32 beds, which will be 250 when it's all done, of mental health, of a acute substance abuse treatment center, and housing on site. Because you can't expect somebody to go to a safe ground or a campsite and then take their meds and follow up with their medication. No, we need to have a place to go. So that way, if it's the HEART team, the police department, or the fire department, if they respond to a call, then they have a place to go that's actually going to keep us from revolving around the jail or revolving around the hospital. That's the solution we need to take forward.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you, brother. And I thank you for all the work you've done, because every time I need something and I call your office, you guys are always there, so thank you for that. Without further ado, just give you an additional 2 minutes. You can take the time to close out and remind folks why you will be the best person at the county level for them.
Well, thank you, Volma. Look, I come at this from the neighborhood level. I started as a neighborhood leader. I volunteered for a tree planting event, and then the neighborhood just sucks you in. Next thing you know, you're on a board and representing your neighborhood. But I do it because I care about community. I care about our neighbors, and I take that from that approach. People want a safe neighborhood to live in. They want a good job so they can control their own future. And they want a good education so that their kids can have a prosperous future. To me, it's that simple. As a parent now with 2 kids, I focus on working with people, just like when you call for something. That's how we get in local government something done. And if you just take a drive down Stockton Boulevard, you're going to see the work I've been able to do with community. building housing, and supporting new local businesses, immigrant businesses, people who are, grown up here and want to rebuild, of diversity, from the best banh mi to ribs to a chile relleno. There's all of that flavor in that area. But also on Stockton Boulevard, I take things head on. I'm not afraid of NIMBYism. I work with community to avoid NIMBYism. NIMBYism occurs when we don't work with community. And we have 175 beds. I have a manufactured home community there where people who are on the street are also receiving on-site behavioral health services already. That's the leadership with the city, with the county. I've been able to do that, and that's why I'm endorsed by all the 5 supervisors, Democrat, Republican, Independent, by our labor unions, our construction workers unions, by the social workers that are in the ER room every day working with people who have this issue, and by the nurses and midwives who even delivered my children. They've all endorsed me in here. Proud to run with a strong record of working with people because someone gave me a chance, and I'm giving Sacramento my opportunity, my sweat equity to pay it forward. So thank you, Volma.
Oh, thank you, Eric. Thank you for coming in, brother.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you very much.
All right, awesome.